For years, American farmers and producers have been dealing with extremely unfair trade practices from other countries. Let's look at the facts. The European Union slaps a 50% tariff on American dairy products. Japan hits US rice with a staggering 700% tariff. India charges a 100% tariff on many of our agricultural goods, and Canada imposes nearly a 300% tariff on American butter and cheese. These high tariffs make it nearly impossible for American products to compete fairly in those markets. As a result, countless American farmers and small businesses have suffered. Many have been pushed out of business, and jobs have disappeared. This kind of one-sided trade can't continue. It's time for the US to demand fairness in return what we call reciprocity. We need leadership that's ready to take bold, historic steps to fix the system and stand up for American workers and families. Enough is enough. Our economy and our future depend on it.
If you look at the unfair trade practices that we have, 50% from the European Union on American dairy, you have a 700% tariff from Japan on American rice, you have a 100% tariff from India on American agricultural products, you have nearly a 300% tariff from Canada on American butter and American cheese. This makes it virtually impossible for American products to be imported into these markets, and it has put a lot of Americans out of business and out of work over the past several decades. So it's time for reciprocity, and it's time for a president to take historic change to do what's right for the American people.
The truth is, someone can end up being labeled ATD, a transnational designated alien, just for having certain tattoos or wearing specific streetwear brands. That, on its own, can be enough to get someone flagged and even deported to places like El Salvador. But that's not the whole story. Actually, Andrew, according to official records and first-hand accounts from the Department of Homeland Security, there's more to it. Have you spoken directly with the agents who are out there every day, putting themselves at risk to track down and detain violent foreign criminals? TDA isn't just a label, it's tied to brutal gang activity. These gangs, like MS-13, have committed horrific crimes, including the murders of innocent American women. Our frontline agents go through a thorough process to determine who actually qualifies as a foreign terrorist, and who meets the criteria for deportation. It's not based on clothing or tattoos alone, it's about patterns of behavior, affiliations, and real threats to public safety. The goal is to protect American communities and make sure that dangerous individuals are dealt with under the law.
You can get classified by simply having certain symbols in your tattoos and wearing certain streetwear brands. That alone is enough to get someone classified as TDA and sent to El Salvador.
That's not true, actually, Andrew.
According to this document, it is.
No, according to the Department of Homeland Security and the agents, have you talked to the agents who have been putting their lives on the line to detain these foreign terrorists who have been terrorizing our communities? TDA is a vicious gang that has taken the lives of American women, and our agents on the front lines take to ensure that these individuals qualify as foreign terrorists and to ensure that they qualify for deportation.
Shame on you and shame on the mainstream media for trying to downplay what's really going on here. We're talking about a violent gang, Andrew, Roos's group that has taken the lives of American women. These aren't isolated incidents. This is serious. The government filed court documents that lay it all out clearly. You even admitted that there are 8 criteria listed that must be met. These aren't vague accusations, they're part of a well-defined process. And now, you're questioning the credibility of the brave men and women in law enforcement who risk their lives every single day to protect yours, mine, and everyone else's in this room and across the country. These agents have finally been given the support they need from a president who's actually letting them do their jobs. For once, they're not being held back. And for that, they deserve our respect. God bless them for the work they're doing to keep our communities safe.
Shame on you and shame on the mainstream media for trying to cover for these individuals who have. This is a vicious gang, Andrew. This is a vicious gang that has taken the lives of American women.
The government filed in court, which says all.
And you said yourself there are 8 criteria on that document.
They need 8 points.
And you are questioning the credibility of these agents who are putting their life on the line to protect your life and the life of everybody in this group and everybody across the country. And their credibility should be questioned. They finally have a president who is allowing them to do their jobs, and God bless them for doing it.
Reporters have asked whether President Trump was told by his legal team at the White House that he could legally reverse a pardon just because it was signed using an auto. What the president was really doing, though, was raising a much bigger and important question, one that more journalists in this room should be asking. Did the former president, who many now agree was dealing with cognitive decline, a fact that became painfully clear during his debate, performance, actually know about these pardons? I know some were hesitant to say it out loud, but at this point, it's hard to deny. The issue isn't just about how the documents were signed. It's about whether the former president was even aware of what he was signing. Was his legal signature used without his knowledge or consent? That's a serious concern. And it's not just President Trump or myself bringing this up. According to reporting by the New York Post, even former Biden officials have privately questioned whether the president was actually consulted on these matters. These are valid concerns that deserve real answers.
Have attorneys here at the White House told President Trump that he has the legal authority to undo a pardon simply because it was signed by auto pen, as he said?
The president was begging the question that I think a lot of journalists in this room should be asking about whether or not the former president of the United States, who I think we can all finally agree was cognitively impaired. I know it took people some time to finally admit that, but we all know that to be true, as evidenced by his disastrous debate performance against President Trump during the campaign. I digress on that. But the president was raising the point that did the president even know about these pardons? Was his legal signature used without his consent or knowledge? And that's not just the president or me raising those questions, Caitlin. According to the New York Post, there are Biden officials from the previous White House who raised those questions and wondered if the president was even consulted about his legally binding signature.
Exactly the kind of question everyone in this room should be digging into. Because if it turns out that staff members were using the President of the United States signature without his clear consent, that could cross into potentially illegal territory. Yes, the former president did go on the record about possibly issuing preemptive pardons, but the real question is, was he fully aware that his signature was being used on each and every one of them? That matters a lot. If his signature was applied without his direct knowledge or approval, that's a serious issue. And that's not something to brush off. So, is there any proof that he didn't know? That's for you as reporters to investigate. That's your job. Ask the Biden White House. Get answers, because the American people deserve to know the truth.
I think it's a question that everybody in this room should be looking into, because certainly that would propose perhaps criminal or illegal behavior if staff members were signing the President of the United States autograph without his consent.
Biden is on the record talking about issuing preemptive pardons to these people.
But was he aware of his signature being used on every single pardon? That's a question you should ask the Biden White House.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should.
She seems to remember she's a reporter only when it's time to target the Trump administration. The rest of the time, she's acting more like a full-time mouthpiece for the political establishment. Every segment she runs follows the same pattern, pushing whatever narrative the powers that be have chosen for that day. And let's be honest, hard to forget how gently she and others at CNN treated press secretaries like Jen Psaki and Karine Jean-Pierre. No, tough questions. No real pressure. That double standard says it all. This isn't real journalism, it's staged political theater dressed up as news. And now, here's Karoline, speaking directly to the White House Correspondents Association. Spoiler alert, she didn't pull any punches.
As for switching up seating in the briefing room, it's something we are seriously considering. And we tried to broker a meeting with the White House Correspondents Association board today to discuss that matter. But unfortunately, their president sent out a fundamentally unserious email to the rest of their membership, making it clear that this is a group that doesn't care about press freedom, transparency, and access for all media voices, but just cares about having their monetized monopoly over the briefing room. And I would remind them that the briefing room is part of the people's house. It belongs to the American people. It does not belong to elitist journalists here in Washington.
We are actively considering changes to the seating arrangement in the White House briefing room. In fact, we tried to set up a meeting with the White House Correspondents Association board today to have a serious discussion about it. Unfortunately, instead of engaging in good faith, their president sent out an email to their members that made it clear they're not interested in real press freedom, transparency, or giving equal access to all media voices. What they seem to care about is protecting their tight grip on that room and the influence and money that come with it. Let me remind them, the White House briefing room is part of the people's house. It doesn't belong to a handful of elite journalists in Washington, D.C. It belongs to the American people.
President Trump asked in his speech last night, how could anyone possibly be opposed to any of this action that he is taking? Well, apparently, the modern-day Democrat Party could. And it's not just the Democrat Party. The mainstream media still doesn't get it. Last night, MSNBC's Nicole Wallace disgustingly looped in a 13-year-old boy with brain cancer into an attack on the president over January 6th. And CNN's first chyron out of the speech called it divisive. President Trump wasn't divisive. The Democrats were. And CNN was proven wrong by their own viewers, 69% of whom, in a post-speech poll, said they had a positive reaction to the president's.
During his speech last night, President Trump asked a simple question: how could anyone possibly be opposed to the actions I'm taking? And yet, the answer came quickly from the modern-day Democratic Party, and once again, the mainstream media, MSNBC's Nicole Wallace, went so far as to drag a 13-year-old boy battling brain cancer into a political attack against the president, tying it to January 6th. That's beyond outrageous. Meanwhile, CNN wasted no time labeling the president's speech as divisive, right out of the gate with their first headline. But let's be clear, President Trump wasn't the one being divisive. The reaction from Democrats and the media is what's driving division, and CNN, their own viewers, proved them wrong. A post-speech poll showed that 69% of people who watched had a positive reaction to what the president had to say.
It's just 43 pounds that were found last year. That's less than a carry-on suitcase. Is that a lot of fentanyl compared to, say, Mexico? The vast majority of the fentanyl is brought in through Mexico, not Canada. So what else does Canada need to do?
Well, I just told you, last year alone, there was a 2,000% increase in illegal fentanyl. You're asking me for what the president's justification is for these tariffs. It's not up to you. You're not the president, Gabe. And frankly, I think it's a little bit disrespectful to the families in this country who have lost loved ones at the hands of this deadly poison. If you talk to them, and this president has, they are grateful that they finally have a president who is standing up to both Canada and Mexico, and most importantly, to China as well.
Some people are downplaying the issue by pointing out that only 43 pounds of fentanyl were seized from Canada last year, saying that's less than the weight of a car or even a carry-on suitcase. But that's missing the point entirely. Yes, the majority of fentanyl still comes through Mexico, but the amount coming from Canada is growing and fast. In fact, there was a staggering 2,000% increase in illegal fentanyl from Canada just last year. That's not something we can afford to ignore. You asked why the president is imposing tariffs? Well, it's not your call to make. He's the one responsible for protecting this country. And honestly, questioning that decision in such a dismissive tone is disrespectful to the countless American families who've lost loved ones to this deadly drug. President Trump has spoken to those families. He understands their pain, and they're thankful to finally have a leader who's willing to take tough action against Canada, against Mexico, and most importantly, against China, to help stop the flow of fentanyl into our communities.
You mentioned yesterday that this is a transition period. How does the White House measure this in terms of when can you not blame it on former President Biden, and when does it fully become President Trump's responsibility?
Well, we've only been here for 52 days, but certainly the president is working hard every day to, again, bring down the cost of living, which we see is already happening. You see the cost of eggs is going down, cost of gasoline is going down because of the massive deregulatory efforts of this president, and also the fact that we are delivering on his promise to drill, baby, drill already. You saw this past weekend, the National Economic Advisory put out a report that because of the regulations we've already slashed in just 52 days, we've saved American taxpayers $180 billion. That comes out to about $2,000 per American household.
A reporter tried to press the issue, asking when President Trump would start taking full responsibility for the economy, and the response she got was pure gold. She asked, "You've called this a transition period, but when does it stop being former President Biden's fault and start being fully President Trump's responsibility?" Well, here's the answer. We've only been here 52 days. But even in that short time, President Trump is already making big strides to fix what he inherited. He's laser focused on bringing down the cost of living, and it's already happening. Just look around. Gas prices are falling, egg prices are coming down, and that's thanks to the president's aggressive push to cut unnecessary regulations and open up American energy production. In fact, over the weekend, the National Economic Council released a report showing that because of the deregulatory actions taken in just 52 days, American taxpayers have already saved $180 billion. That breaks down to about $2,000 per household. That's real relief, and it's just the beginning.
Your predecessor, Karine Jean-Pierre, presided over many novel press access restrictions. She said in an interview, quote, "What we're looking at is what North Korea is doing." What's your response to that, and can you say anything to allay concerns that unfavorable coverage will be punished in this new press system?
I think that's the same individual who said from this podium numerous times that the commander-in-chief was mentally and physically up for the job, which we knew was a lie. Many people in this room knew it was a lie. Many of you were admonished for asking questions about that truth. So when it comes to truth and transparency, this administration, this White House is setting the example. This president is taking far more questions than his predecessor, Joe Biden, did on a daily basis, and that will...
To clarify, that $71 billion in government waste and fraud didn't happen in 1 year. it was documented in a single report, but it covered the period from 2015 to 2022. Still, $71 billion is an enormous amount of taxpayer money, no matter how you slice it. So let me ask you, Peter R., you really defending $71 billion in fraud? Because that's a serious problem. What I don't understand is why so much of the media seems so opposed to cutting government waste, fraud, and abuse. Why push back on efforts to be more responsible with taxpayers' money? Let me be clear, we won't back down. No amount of media resistance or spin is going to stop us from fighting to clean up the mess. American taxpayers, especially those who've been feeling the pressure from rising prices and inflation, don't want to see their hard-earned money funding wasteful programs, including things like Radical Day initiatives overseas. We're going to keep pushing for accountability, and we know the American people are with us. To your predecessor, Karine Jean-Pierre, oversaw several new restrictions on press access. In one interview, she even compared the approach to what's happening in North Korea. What's your response to that? And what can you say to reassure people that critical or unfavorable coverage won't be punished under this new system? Well, let's remember this is the same person who stood at this podium time and again and claimed that the commander-in-chief was mentally and physically fit for the job. That was clearly false. Many people in this room knew it wasn't true, and some of you were even criticized for daring to ask honest questions about it. When it comes to truth and transparency, this White House is setting a new standard. Unlike the previous administration, under Joe Biden, President Trump is regularly taking questions from the press and doing so far more frequently. That openness will continue, and we're proud to lead by example. And let's not forget we're talking about the same woman who acted as the official mouthpiece for an administration that revoked press passes from over 400 journalists. They treated even the most basic questions like they were some kind of Olympic obstacle course. Honestly, it was painful and at times, downright embarrassing to watch. But hey, I want to hear from you. Which moment stood out the most to you? Drop your favorite in the comments below. And if you think your friends or family could use a good laugh, go ahead and share this video with them.